So how does massive, life-altering change actually happen? It's almost never that one big, dramatic moment. It's the tiny, almost invisible things we do every single day. That is the incredible idea behind Atomic Habits, that these tiny 1% improvements, they all add up, they compound over time into these truly amazing results. And to really get just how powerful this is, we've got to start with the author's own story of hitting absolute rock bottom.
Our story starts with a really simple question. Just imagine for a second, waking up at a hospital, you're totally confused, you have no clue how you got there. That was the reality for the author James Clear after a terrible accident. A nurse just leans over and asks him, "What year is it?"
And his answer? 1998. But that answer wasn't just wrong, it was terrifyingly wrong.
Yeah, the correct answer was 2002. Just like that, he had lost 4 years of his life. Now, this wasn't just some simple mix-up. This was the moment he realized just how severe his brain injury really was. And that moment, well, it changed everything for him.
So what on earth happened to put him in that hospital bed? Well, during a high school baseball game, a bat slipped out of someone's hands, flew through the air, and hit him square between the eyes. The impact was just catastrophic. He ended up in a medically induced coma with multiple skull fractures. At that point, his future looked incredibly bleak.
In the list of his injuries, it's just staggering. Besides the coma and the brain swelling, he temporarily lost his ability to smell. At one point, get this, blowing his nose actually forced air up through the cracks in his eye socket, making his left eyeball bulge out. It took him eight long months before he could even drive a car again. It was from this absolute low point that his entire journey really began.
So when Clear finally made it to college, he knew he couldn't just rely on his old talent. He was at the very bottom of the baseball team's roster. So he decided to focus on the only thing he felt he could control, tiny little habits.
Okay, now what's so cool about this slide is you can see the progression. As a freshman, he just focused on keeping his room tidy and getting good sleep. They seem like such small, unimportant things, right? But they gave him a sense of control. By his sophomore year, he was a starting pitcher. Junior year, he's voted team captain. And by senior year, he was named the top male athlete at his entire university and an academic All-American. He reached his potential, not because of one big heroic effort, but because thousands of tiny habits all added up.
Now you might be thinking, okay, great comeback story. But this idea of small gains adding up, it's not just a personal story. It is a universal principle. And one of the best examples of this comes from a place you might not expect: professional cycling.
For almost 100 years, the British cycling team was, well, a running joke. They were so bad that one of the top bike manufacturers actually refused to sell them bikes because they were worried it would hurt their brand. But then they hired a new performance director, Dave Brailsford, and he had this deceptively simple idea: improve everything by just 1%.
And this just shows the strategy perfectly. They looked everywhere for that tiny 1% edge. Sure, they improved the bike seats and rubbed alcohol on the tires for better grip, but they also did things nobody else was even thinking about. They hired a surgeon to teach the cyclists how to wash their hands properly to avoid getting sick. They tested different massage gels. They even figured out the best pillow for each individual rider and painted the inside of their truck white just so they could spot tiny bits of dust that might mess with the bikes.
So, all that obsessive, tiny stuff, did it work?
Oh yeah.
Just 5 years after Brailsford took over, at the 2008 Beijing Olympics, the team won an incredible 60% of the gold medals available in their sport. The aggregation of all those marginal gains led to total domination.
Okay, but here is the really crucial part. These small changes, they almost never give you results right away. There's almost always this frustrating period of time, Cure calls it the valley of disappointment, where you're putting in the work but you're just not seeing any progress. The book uses a perfect analogy for this. Think of an ice cube in a cold room. At 28 degrees, nothing. 29, 30, 31 degrees, still nothing. But at 32 degrees, boom, you hit a breakthrough. That tiny 1-degree shift unlocks this massive change, but it was all the consistent work before that moment that made it possible.
All right, so we get the power of 1% gains. It makes sense. But how do we actually do this? If just relying on pure willpower isn't the answer, then what is? Let's get into the practical side of things.
This quote right here holds a really profound idea. We like to think that our actions are all about our motivation or our self-discipline. But the psychologist Kurt Lewin had a different idea. He said our behavior is shaped just as much by our environment. It's like this invisible hand that guides our choices every single day. This map is a really fascinating big picture example.
Historians figured out that farming spread way faster from east to west across Europe and Asia than it did from north to south in the Americas. Why? Well, the environment. See, the climate is pretty similar along the same line of latitude, so there was less friction for crops to grow. And in the exact same way, your immediate environment, your room, your house, it creates friction or flow for your habits. So the big takeaway here is this: we have to become the architects of our world, not just passive consumers living in it.
So, instead of trying to use heroic willpower to resist eating that cookie, a much better strategy is to just design your environment so you don't even need willpower in the first place, right? It's a lot easier to avoid eating cookies if there are no cookies in the house to begin with. The most disciplined people out there, they aren't superhuman. They're just better at structuring their lives to make success the easy path.
And one of the best ways to structure your life for success is what's called the 2-minute rule. The whole idea is to make starting a new habit so ridiculously easy that it's almost impossible not to do it. So, read a book becomes read 1 page. Run 3 miles becomes put on my running shoes. The goal isn't to be perfect. The goal is to master the art of just showing up. Because once you've started, it's so much easier to keep going.
Okay, so when we put all these ideas together, the power of 1% improvements, designing our environment, making habits super easy to start, we get to the ultimate takeaway of this book: how we can actually compound our way to our full potential.
Every single day is filled with these tiny, decisive moments. You know, the choice to cook a healthy meal or just order takeout. The choice to put on your running shoes or just grab the TV remote. As this diagram shows so well, each one of those choices is like a little fork in the road. By itself, it seems like no big deal. But over time, all those small choices, they compound, and they lead you to completely different destinations in life.
This quote about the stonecutter, it's so powerful. It actually hangs in the locker room of the San Antonio Spurs, one of the most successful sports teams ever. And it just perfectly captures the whole idea of atomic habits. The big breakthrough, the rock splitting in two, it doesn't come from that final dramatic hit. It comes from all the consistent, often boring, unseen work that came before it. At the end of the day, this whole thing boils down to a really simple truth. Your results in life are just a lagging measure of your habits. Your net worth is a lagging measure of your financial habits. Your health is a lagging measure of your daily habits. So the question I want to leave you with is this: what's one tiny 1% change you can make today that your future self will thank you for?